Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the game, and Granny's ghastly figure appeared, hobbling towards the screen. We all screamed as Ethan's character ran and hid under a bed, the horrifying visage of Granny's feet shuffling past us. Welcome to Horror Haunted. Let me tell you some personal experiences that even haunts me today. Past us. God, that's terrifying, Mia muttered, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan grinned. Told you it'd be fun. But as the game continued, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and an unexplainable draft seemed to blow through, despite the windows being closed. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Did anyone else feel that? I asked, looking around nervously. Jason nodded, his usual bravado gone. Yeah, it's like someone opened a window. We tried to brush it off, blaming it on our overactive imaginations. But then, Ethan's phone began to glitch. The game froze, and the screen went black. Ethan cursed under his breath and tried to restart it, but the phone remained unresponsive. Guess that's it for our spooky game night, Mia said with a nervous laugh. Just as we were about to call it quits, the TV flickered back to life, displaying the game's main menu. Ethan hadn't touched his phone. The controller was on the table, untouched. We stared at the screen in disbelief as the game started on its own, the haunting music echoing through the room. This isn't funny, Ethan, Mia said, her voice trembling. It's not me, I swear, Ethan replied, his face pale. As the game continued without any input from us, we heard a distinct creaking sound coming from upstairs. My heart raced as the creaking grew louder, as if someone, or something, was walking down the hallway above us. Maybe it's your parents, I whispered, clinging to any rational explanation. They're out of town, Ethan replied, his eyes wide with fear. We huddled together, listening as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs and began descending, each step slow and deliberate. The sound was eerily similar to the footsteps of Granny in the game, and my mind struggled to separate the virtual terror from the real-world horror unfolding around us. Suddenly, the door to the living room creaked open, and we all jumped. The room grew colder still, and a sense of dread washed over me. I felt an overwhelming urge to run, but my legs refused to move. Who's there? Ethan called out, his voice shaky. There was no answer, just the soft, shuffling sound of footsteps drawing closer. In the flickering candlelight, we saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. The figure slowly moved towards us, and as it stepped into the light, we saw her, Granny, just as she appeared in the game, her eyes hollow and her face twisted into a malevolent grin. We screamed and scrambled to our feet, knocking over the table in our haste. The candles went out, plunging the room into darkness. I could hear my friends' panicked breaths and feel their frantic movements as we tried to find the door. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion, unable to comprehend how a character from a game had come to life. Get out! Get out! Jason shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. We stumbled through the dark, finally bursting out of the house and into the night. We didn't stop running until we reached the street, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. We stood there, trembling and looking back at Ethan's house, half expecting to see Granny coming after us. What just happened? Mia panted, her face pale. I don't know, Ethan said, his eyes wide with terror. But we're never playing that game again. We spent the rest of the night huddled together at a nearby diner, too afraid to go back to Ethan's house. The memory of Granny's twisted smile haunted me for weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we had brought something dark and dangerous into our lives that night. Playing a horror game at 3 a.m. had seemed like a harmless thrill, but it had turned into a nightmare we would never forget. The line between reality and the virtual world had blurred, and we had come face to face with something truly terrifying. The experience left us all changed, a stark reminder that some things are better left alone. It was a humid summer night when my friends and I gathered at Ethan's house for our usual weekend hangout. We had all just graduated high school and were savoring the last few weeks of freedom before heading off to different colleges. We usually spent these nights watching horror movies or playing video games, but that night, Ethan had something different in mind. "Have you guys heard of the game, Granny?" Ethan asked, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Isn't that the creepy mobile game where you have to escape a haunted house?" I replied, a shiver running down my spine at the memory of the game's terrifying jump scares. "Exactly. But I've heard that playing it at 3 a.m. makes it way scarier," Ethan continued. "Wanna try it?" I exchanged glances with our friends, Mia and Jason. Mia, ever the skeptic, rolled her eyes. "It's just a game, Ethan. It's not going to be any different just because it's 3 a.m. But Jason, always up for a thrill, nodded eagerly. "Let's do it. It'll be fun." Reluctantly, I agreed, and we settled into the dimly lit living room, the only illumination coming from the eerie blue glow of the television screen. Ethan connected his phone to the TV so we could all watch, and we waited for the clock to strike 3 a.m. As the minute hand finally clicked into place, Ethan launched the game. The haunting music started, and the image of the decrepit old house filled the screen. We all fell silent, the tension in the room palpable. Ethan controlled the game while the rest of us watched, our hearts pounding with each creak of the floorboards and distant whisper. The objective was simple: escape the house without getting caught by Granny, a monstrous figure who stalked the halls, ready to pounce at any sound. The game was nerve-wracking during the day, but in the dead of night, it took on a whole new level of terror. Ethan's character moved cautiously through the dark, narrow corridors, picking up items and solving puzzles to unlock the way out.